Hi everybody, this is Michele Denman. Well, I wanted to share this clip from the Jesus Revolution film. This is probably one of my favorite clips I've seen so far. It's so powerful. It's about a sheep without a shepherd. And this is a profound moment when Lonnie Frisbee, who's depicted here, he's one of the main catalysts for the Jesus People movement of the late 60s, early 70s in Southern California. And in this moment, he is meeting Pastor Chuck Smith of the Calvary Chapel. And what happened is that Pastor Chuck's wife had been praying for the hippies. And they had just been in that kind of like free love movement, the kind of whole 60s revolution thing. And she's praying, and Pastor Chuck is really judgmental and saying, they just need to take a bath, and he doesn't really have the heart yet. And his wife really does. And so she's praying. And so then what happens is that Pastor Chuck's daughter ends up meeting Lonnie Frisbee, and then these two meet. And this clip is the moment of them meeting when Lonnie is sharing with Pastor Chuck. And I believe this is so poignant how God uses people, because Lonnie had a very difficult background. He was abused as a child. It led him into drug abuse. It led him into the New Age, the occult, Eastern religions. He was really searching, and he cried out to God, like, Lord, show me if you're real. And Lonnie ends up getting saved. And this is a powerful story, and there's so much that occurs after, but he is like one of the main catalysts. So I just want to first share this clip with you about them meeting. It's so good.
Jeanette tells me you're a pastor.
Yes. Currently.
I know we must seem pretty strange. But if you look a little deeper, if you look with love, you'll see a bunch of kids that are searching for all the right things, just in all the wrong places. So to answer your question, how do I describe my people? They're sheep without a shepherd, chasing hard after lies. And the trouble is, your people reject them. So I ask you, Pastor, how can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? We can only walk through doors open to us. And your church, well, that's a door that's shut.
Wow. Powerful. Oh, I just love that. That scene is so powerful because it's so real. And I really believe it grabs the heart. I really believe it's the heart of Jesus. And we look at the parallels again of that time and then now, and how there are so many kids that are lost in New Age ideas. They don't even know they're in the New Age. Drugs, we look at the epidemic right now. I just can't stop crying. Oh, I've been crying for days. It's just the Lord moving. The epidemic of drugs, and right now where so many kids are lost. And that's why this movie is so powerful, because it's really highlighting, and I believe the Lord is exposing right now, and he's highlighting this very day of 2/22, just where there's been religious abuse or spiritual abuse. Oh, Lord. He's exposing. People have been harmed, They're already messed up, wounded. They go into a church, they get judged, criticized, they don't fit in. That's why he's highlighting the outcasts, the misfits, because there's so many people that have been rejected. And Lonnie really was such a pure heart. He was a pure vessel, and he had such a difficult childhood, abused severely as a child. And God looks at his heart. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And he was still used greatly by God, even with his wounds. And he needed more healing, and I'm sad how his life went. It's a tragedy, actually, how his life ended up going, because he didn't have a property. He still didn't have a complete shepherding of how he needed healing from trauma and what he was actually dealing with. And although he was saved, he still struggled later. And it's kind of, he kind of went back and forth with things, and he ended up struggling a lot, and he didn't really have people that understood his need for deliverance. And this is why his story is so important right now. I want to share a quote from Jennifer Miskov. She shares a powerful quote about Lonnie. I'm going to share this with you right now. Sharing his story is important for dismantling the cancel culture ideology and celebrating and honoring the legacy of people despite their failures. His story teaches us that we must not use people for their gifting, but we must become family together. His story is a call to fight for each other, believe the best, and cover each other in our times of weakness. It is a story about being fully yielded to the Holy Spirit and being used by God to spark revival. And then she has another quote that I love. She says, God will pour out his spirit through those we least expect, and we may even be offended by. It is important that we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. We must humble ourselves to receive all God has, even if it comes through a package we least expect. God is also pouring out new wine. We must be open to new wineskins emerging to steward the new wine. And she shares wonderful thoughts about Lonnie and the Jesus people. I really love her heart. And what's also really neat is what the Lord has been highlighting to me, really focusing on California, because we have these wells of revival, like the Jesus People movement. And then I don't know if you saw some of the clips I did about Amy Semple McPherson. She was also a revivalist and way ahead of her time, a pioneer in the 30s, and she passed away in 1944. She was the first Christian, she had the first Christian radio in the United States. She was from Canada, but she was a pioneer in using media, and she was also deeply connected to Hollywood. She was very close friends with Charlie Chaplin. Movie stars would come to her services, such as Jean Harlow and Clara Bow, and they were drawn to her and her teachings, but it was really the Lord that was drawing them. But she would use parables and stories and operas and plays, and she would put dramatic events, like dramatic stories in the services, and use the media and the arts. And she wrote operas and songs, and I just thought, wow, this woman was a courageous pioneer, and especially being a woman at that time. And her life wasn't easy either, but she's, again, that Angelus Temple is still there in LA. She's also somebody I have been feeling the Lord speak about, and just those wells of revival are rich in California. So really watch California. I believe we're going to see another awakening in California. We've got the Azusa Street revival as well. And there's so much we can learn. Every life is either an example or a tragedy. And I believe there's a lot to learn. I've really been focused on learning about Lonnie, because he was used greatly, and he was also very broken. And he wasn't perfect. He kind of reminds me of like a David. He was not perfect. So it just gives hope and so much light to what God is doing right now in this time. And I think we can learn so much if we humble ourselves. If my people humble themselves, I will heal the land. And it requires a humility. I know we're kind of seeing sort of a divide right now. There are people that are opposing this move, and then there's, they're kind of that religion versus, a move of God. And we see that, but, I just love seeing people like Tim Sheets, Dutch Sheets has been saying just exactly, he's been talking about Asbury being just the beginning, and he's also been talking about the 222, and I love his heart, and he's just such a beautiful man of God. Dutch Sheets, and Tim Sheets is his brother. So anyway, the film comes out early today, 2/22. It's coming into theaters, and I really believe it's a tool for the gospel. Kelsey Grammer has been doing a lot of interviews, and he cries when he's giving the interviews when he talks about the Lord. And I think was the perfect person. He had been looking for something more meaningful, and the next day the script comes to his house. So God was on his heart. We have to remember, God's looking at somebody's heart. And some people may not. The other thing when we have to look at people is sometimes it looks like people you know, God's working in them, and they may not be completely like born again yet. And again, I don't know exactly where he's at, but I do see that God is really moving. And we just have to trust God's timing and really not prejudge, because, you know, God knows it sometimes takes time. You know, people sometimes, until they, you know, only the Holy Spirit can change somebody. So just really patience. And I just am so excited about what's happening right now. We're just seeing so much going on with the Asbury revival, and then it's just the beginning of what God is going to be outpouring. And keep your eyes on California. I believe we're going to see a great move there as well. So God bless you. I wanted to share this with you. Have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.